What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller from Hook'emHeadlines.com coming back at y'all today with another fall camp update video. Today, one of the most highly anticipated days of fall camp so far. Texas participated in their first scrimmage of fall camp. I believe that started earlier this morning. I think they wanted to get that scrimmage done before the Austin heat really kicked in. Always a really anticipated event for fall camp. Not only to see how the depth chart's stacking up, see which players are standing out, but also make sure that you're avoiding injuries and all that. Not to bring up past wounds, but it's good that from the early returns and reports from the scrimmage that we don't have any injuries like we did last year with guys like Isaiah Nayor and Junior Aguilar missing the season after. So, I wanted to cover just some of the notes, nuggets, things like that, and then mainly the standouts from today, like big plays that were made, things like that. I posted my 5 standouts from the scrimmage over on the site at Hook'emHeadlines.com. As always, I'll link that in the description below. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. Like I said, I want to cover some of the key notes and nuggets from the scrimmage. So I think I was a little bit early to say this on the article that I posted, but some of the injuries that took place, the one that I did note was Xavier Worthy. He was there. I think they did like a 20 or 30 minute run through in practice just with like individual and team drills before actually getting into the scrimmage. And Worthy was wearing the green jersey for that. And then I don't believe that he was a participant in the scrimmage. Other injury updates of note, Anwar Richardson of Orange Bloods reported that Jordan Whittington left the scrimmage. Looks like it was an upper body injury, arm or shoulder. It says he went to the locker room and did not return, so that is something obviously to be worth watching there. Looks like Andre Kojo has been dealing with an ankle injury that has limited him this week, and he was a limited participant running with the third string offensive line. And then I think there was one more injury. Yeah, JT Sanders, it looks like suffered a stinger on a play that I'll get into a little bit later, but he kind of had a rough day, but it sounds like he suffered a stinger on a 10 or 12 yard catch over the middle that resulted in a fumble that was knocked out by freshman linebacker Liona Lefau. Sanders, I think he was a limited participant the rest of the way. Like I said, I don't think this will be anything super serious, but we'll obviously, as with the rest of the injuries, continue to monitor that. On a positive note, the last few days, I've heard that Sadir Mitchell seems to be doing well. I believe he's back in practice and participated in the scrimmage fully. He was helped off the practice field earlier this week. It was Monday or Tuesday with a leg injury. Got an MRI, I believe that was Wednesday, and I think that came back negative. So good news there. For the most part, Texas has done well avoiding injuries outside of yesterday was announced by Steve Sarkisian that Savion Red is dealing with an injury issue. I think it's a shoulder upper body injury issue that will keep him out a couple of weeks, but I believe he should be back in practice for week 1 leading up to the season opener against Rice on September 2nd. A couple of depth chart notes before I get into the standouts from the practice. We've heard this week that DJ Campbell got a lot of the first team reps at right guard. I believe for most of the week he was actually splitting those first team reps with Cole Hudson. In this game, he was I believe taking the bulk of the first team reps at right guard with Cole Hudson, taking some of the second team reps at interior offensive line, namely at center. Jake Majors was taking the starting reps at center. It sounds like he will be the starter at center more than likely heading into the season, barring injury or anything like that. All the rest of the first team offensive line was the same as, throughout fall camp and same as last year. Hayden Connor left guard, Kelvin Banks left tackle, Christian Jones right tackle. With the second team, there was a little bit of movement. Trevor Gooseby was the second team left tackle opposite Cam Williams. Andre Kojo has taken some reps there. Peyton Kirkland has also taken some reps there. I think that's a positive sign for Gooseby's development. He's one of the multiple true freshmen that Texas signed in the 2023 class. I think he's one of the higher upside guys, but he's been taking a lot of the third team reps in camp this offseason, and I think that this could be something to watch moving forward. It also could have something to do with Kojo's injury, but I believe that bumped Kirkland down to the third team reps at offensive tackle, so that's interesting because he's been taking a lot of the second team reps since spring ball. And then with the defense, along the defensive front, you have Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy up front, but then Alfred Collins took a lot of the first team reps, kind of as like a 4-eye 5 tech, more of a true defensive end. And then Ethan Burke opposite him. Baron Sorrell obviously taking a lot of the reps there as well. But, I thought that was really interesting because I think you're going to see a lot of Alfred Collins running with the first teamers this fall. I think behind Devondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, Collins is probably going to be that next guy up among like the interior on the interior defensive line rotation. And I'll get more into Alfred Collins later, but just this depth chart movement was interesting. There was a lot of positives that came from the defense today, especially with the interior pass rush. But I think it's important to know that there's some different combinations that PK is experimenting with here, and that I don't know necessarily if there's going to be a set like first team along the defensive front. You got Anthony Hill rotating, just because he's going to be kind of that hybridized edge rusher this year. He's going to be on the field a lot, but then you also got David Benda, Mo Blackwell. Obviously, Jalen Ford's going to be an every down guy at Mike linebacker, but you got a lot of quality guys here, and that it's a really positive sign for the depth that Texas has up front, and that's a really positive development for the first fall scrimmage. Some other notes from just the way that the depth chart looked today. Also on offense, with some of the injuries at wide receiver, you had Isaiah Nayor that took a lot of the first team reps at field receiver. Jonte Cook, I believe, took a lot of the first team reps there as well. And then Casey Kane got a lot more reps when Jordan Whittington ended up leaving due to that upper body injury. So Casey Kane still getting a lot of first team reps as well today. And then looking back at the edge position, this wasn't necessarily movement that happened today. It was earlier this week. But one thing I did want to mention was Colton Vasek moved up to second team at Buck, I believe, behind Ethan Burke. Looks like Ethan Burke has solidified his starting spot there. But Justice Finkley has been running with the second and the third team throughout most of fall camp. Vasek looks like he is developing, especially as a pass rusher, a little bit more quickly than expected, and someone that will definitely contribute this fall. He took a lot of the second team reps again today at edge. And then on the offensive line, I mentioned some of the depth chart movement earlier. One thing that I did notice on one of the practice reports or post-scrimmage reports is that Hayden Connor actually did play some center with the first and second team today. So that's interesting just because I know he was cross-training at center during spring and summer, but he hadn't been doing a whole lot of that this fall from what I heard for the first 2 weeks of training camp. But it sounds like there's still some different line combinations and some different experimentation that Kyle Flood is doing to kind of find that top group of 8 or 10 guys in the trenches heading into the season. Let's go ahead and get into some of the standouts from today's scrimmage. Again, did an article over the site. I had pinpointed 5 specifically, and then there's some younger players that I wanted to give shout outs to as well, and just some big plays that happened today. Let's go ahead and get into it. I'll start just going through the ones I pinpointed in my article. The first one up is Malik Muhammad. I think there's a good chance that you could say Malik Muhammad was just the MVP of today's scrimmage. He came up with an interception. I believe that he returned for like a 25 yard touchdown from Malik Murphy. Murphy had a little bit of a tough day. Again, something that I'll cover when I get into the quarterbacks, talk a little bit more about Ewers. But Muhammad, it sounds like he got a good jump on the route, made a pick or picked the ball off and returned it for 6. And then also he forced a fumble a little bit later in the scrimmage. So multiple turnovers that he forced today. And then just from a perspective of his consistency in pass coverage and his skills there, continued to look good. But, just a few things that were reported for him today. I believe it was TFB Texas that talked about just the day. I specifically mentioned that the day belonged to Malik Muhammad, essentially giving him the crown as the MVP of today's scrimmage. And then there were 2 other reports too that specifically named Muhammad among the top standouts from the scrimmage today. So I think that all around this very positive sign for Malik. He's someone that's proven that he's going to be in that top rotation or that top group of 4 cornerbacks, along with Ryan Watts on the boundary, and then Gavin Holmes and Terrence Brooks at field. And I mentioned I think it was earlier this week on a show that Muhammad could get a lot of rotation, could get a lot of looks at the boundary corner position this fall, but he's just someone that's going to be too good to keep off the field. He's showing that just with the plays he's making and how good he's looked in fall camp these first 2 weeks. Next one up among the standouts, another true freshman, Liona Lefau. I've mentioned Lefau twice this week on the site. I did an article yesterday talking about 3 true freshmen that have stood out in week 2 of fall practice, and Lefau is one of the ones I named because just from a consistency perspective, the maturity in his game, and just how hard he's working, he's someone that deserves a lot of praise. Earlier this week, Jalen Ford gave him some kind words during his post-practice press conference. Kind of caught my eye. Ford noted that just his work ethic and his performance, his understanding of the defense, eagerness to learn, all that just kind of reminds Ford of him a few years ago. And also interesting that Ford talked about Lefau coming up with an interception earlier this week. That was not the only turnover that Lefau forced in scrimmage settings this week. It sounds like he forced a fumble. I mentioned earlier that JT Sanders was dinged up on like a 10, 12-yard catch across the middle, and that fumble was forced by Liona Lefau. He targeted the ball well and knocked it out. It just really sounds like Lefau was all over the place today. Did a nice job in pass coverage, looked natural there. Was finding, locating the ball carrier well in run defense and just contesting space, looking good. So all told, I think it sums it up well. There was another post-scrimmage report that said he was had one of the more impressive days among the true freshmen today. So, I've talked about this ad nauseum this offseason, but I really think that Lefau is on track to be that backup Mike linebacker behind Jalen Ford. And, we still got a long way to go, but potentially with, again, how good he's looked so far with a lot of the plays he's making, someone that, could challenge for that starting Mike linebacker job next year. But, for now, nice to see what Lefau is doing in practice and the scrimmage, and someone that just looks the part physically, is making a lot of the plays, showing maturity well beyond his years. I think he's like 6'1", 227, so he's pretty big now too. Great things from him so far. Next up, and one player that we've mentioned it, I believe, multiple times on the show this week, is senior defensive lineman Alfred Collins. Collins has received a lot of praise this week. Sark mentioned him among the players catching his attention in a press conference a few days ago. Last week, I think there were 2 post-practice reports where he was the first player mentioned among the standouts. Closed practices, though, so coming from team source, that report coming from team sources. But there was some sentiment echoed today that Collins had the best day among all the defensive players for the Longhorns. He sounds like he did a really nice job with the interior pass rush. Again, I mentioned that he was lining up kind of as like a true defensive end. It just sounds like from like a motor and a consistency perspective that Collins is really reaching another gear. And it's nice to hear that we're still getting this positive feedback regarding his performance in the first fall scrimmage, because the last few years we've gotten reports here and there that he was really looking good, but it was never on a consistent basis. And on the field, again, you saw flashes, but never coming through consistently. This is a contract year for him, and so it sounds like he's really starting to step up to the plate and be an integral part of this defensive line rotation. And then turning the attention to the offensive side of the ball, one of the standouts from today's scrimmage, redshirt sophomore running back Jonathon Brooks, from like a consistency perspective, and in multiple phases of the game, blocking, receiving, carrying the ball, that Brooks was the best all-around running back. That was echoed in multiple post-scrimmage reports. I think for the other backs, there was a 30-plus yard touchdown run mentioned for C.J. Baxter. It sounds like he flashed a little bit, but wasn't as consistently good as Brooks. And then Keelan Robinson, I think it was a 40 or 50-yard run on a 4th down that he went for a touchdown. But, for Brooks, he missed practice earlier this week. That was due to don't have any firm reports on that. But, for Brooks, one thing that was echoed was he was finding his gaps while seeing the field, patiently letting the plays develop. And Sark mentioned heading into training camp that running back was a position battle of note, but the more time that goes along in training camp, it feels like Brooks is solidifying himself as RB1. And then among the standouts that I mentioned in my article, last one that I have is redshirt sophomore quarterback Quinn Ewers. Just from what was reported from some of the plays he made, the consistency he had today, he was not only the best quarterback, but the most consistent performer as well. He had multiple touchdowns, 1 touchdown run, and then 2 touchdown passes, one to Jonte Cook, another one to A.D. Mitchell. I do want to highlight today that, it was, I think it was reported once or twice that Ewers looked the most comfortable throwing the ball to A.D. Mitchell, it might be emerging as his favorite target. He really likes those boundary wide receivers. Last offseason, it was Isaiah Nayor that he had a lot of that good chemistry with, that natural connection. Now that looks to be A.D. Mitchell. Mitchell's been one of the standouts all week, just all throughout fall practice. Sark has heaped a lot of praise on him. Chris Jackson as well. Mitchell's been making plays all over the place. Again, had another touchdown today. And then Ewers did have 1 interception. Don't know if I had mentioned that already. It sounds like he threw an interception to Jaron Thompson. Outside of that, though, it was a pretty impressive day for him, nearly spotless. Again, if you remove that interception, it's impressive to me that Ewers was able to hold up the way he was and consistently find his receivers, methodically move the offense down the field. I mentioned that the interior pass rush was pretty rampant today. The defense definitely won the day, but Ewers held his own, definitely did better than the other 2 quarterbacks in this scrimmage, and continues to show why he is QB1 heading into the season. This offense is his. And I wanted to touch on the other 2 quarterbacks, Malik Murphy and Arch Manning. I mentioned earlier that Murphy was probably the shakiest quarterback today. It sounds like he's still kind of getting none of this is surprising. This is his first fully healthy, and you can't even say fully healthy because he still missed some time during the spring, but at least getting consistent fall camp reps. This is first time he's been healthy, and so he still seems like he's still kind of learning the playbook and everything like that, getting in tune with his wide receivers. But sounds like he still had some nice throws on the day, but still kind of settling in there. Arch Manning had some big plays as well. It did sound like he had some ups and downs, just as you would expect a true freshman to have in his first fall scrimmage. But one thing that stuck out, apparently he had a 70-plus yard touchdown run, had some nice deep throws as well. So, good. Sounds like Arch is showing a lot of growth. This is better. I'd say it's better. We heard more highlights, at least, from Arch than in some of the spring scrimmages and in the spring game. So, the growth is visible from him there. But, just from a quarterback perspective, you can see a lot of the talent in this room. I guess for Arch, the fact that he's able to break off a 70-plus yard touchdown run against some of the faster guys on this defense, he's got a little bit more speed than we might have first thought. So, but like I said, as a whole, this quarterback room, it's showing a lot of talent, and especially from Ewers, guy that's just locked in this year. This offense is his. He's ready to take the reins, and he's just showing more composure, more consistency, more maturity than he did last offseason. So really excited to see what he does for the rest of camp and heading into the season. And then, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, did want to talk about some of the other younger players that stood out. A couple other notes here. Heard some good things today from Jonte. I mentioned earlier that I think he did catch a touchdown pass from Quinn Ewers. I believe he had one other from Murphy or Arch today, but he looked good getting the first team reps. That's not surprising. He's one of the biggest surprises. I think not the biggest, but one of the most pleasant surprises so far in fall camp. And so, someone that continues to prove that he's ready to make an immediate impact this fall. But among the offensive linemen, it does sound like Trevor Gooseby performed pretty well. I mentioned earlier he was taking the second team reps at offensive tackle, so definitely proving something there. But also Ethan Burke, he's locking down this starting spot. It sounds like he's looking good. I haven't really heard that he's like one of the top standouts or anything, but he's doing pretty well in run defense. And he's someone that's facing Christian Jones and Kelvin Banks every single day in practice. Mind you that those guys are two all Big 12 caliber, and Banks potential All-American type offensive tackle this fall. And so Burke is going up against some really tough competition, so it's, the statement is iron sharpens iron, and so I think you're definitely going to see that for Burke as someone that really improves heading into the season. But and then, like I said, a few of the other younger players that I wanted to mention, Billy Walton was a name that I saw pop up in quite a few reports. It looks like he had a sack, was pretty disruptive coming off the edge, and it sounds like he's ahead of schedule. I mentioned him in like a summer workouts standouts piece of like a month ago. Sounded like he was doing pretty good in like the 7-on-7 runs, covering the flats, things like that. He has a better understanding of the defensive scheme than you would see out of most of these early enrollees. That was reported, summer enrollees. He was one of the summer enrollees in the 2023 class, but showing a good understanding there. Again, someone that he was, I think, the lowest rated of the edge rushers that signed in the 2023 class, but as you well know, you kind of throw those recruiting rankings out the window when all these guys get to campus. And so Walton, I think he's a guy that can make some noise in his first 2 or 3 years on campus, especially with how he showed out some workouts in the early stages of fall camp and in this first fall scrimmage. Trey Wisner, another player that looked good. From what it sounds like, he's been someone that's been sticking out the last week or so in practice. And with Brooks missing a day there, Savion Red getting injured, Wisner's had an additional opportunity to get some extra reps. This is a crowded running back room, but it seems like he's making the most of his opportunity. Had a couple nice runs, it sounds like, today. So he's someone to keep an eye on moving forward among the true freshmen. And then another younger player, Spencer Shannon. He received some of the third-team reps at tight end behind Gunnar Helm and JT Sanders, and did pretty well, had a couple of catches, was pretty good blocking by my understanding. And so I mentioned him as someone that could contribute early among the summer enrollees just because of how much Texas needs depth at tight end. Behind Helm and Sanders, there really isn't anyone that's proven. I mean, Juan Davis, we haven't heard much at all about him this offseason. And so, it's huge to see Shannon, getting these spots to be able to contribute and getting these valuable scrimmage reps. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for the post-scrimmage news, notes, nuggets, standouts, that sort of thing. We'll come back with, I believe we got another video coming up. Yeah, another video that will be coming in tomorrow. We did a collab between Tarek and Alicia Diartola from our Randa Troy site at Fansided, and then just Fansided main page and editor there. So got some good crossover content there, so be on the lookout for that tomorrow. But anyway, for Andrew Miller at Hook'emHeadlines.com, that's pretty much it. Hook 'em.